Welcome. In this story, I'll gently guide you through the history of the land we now call Italy, from its earliest origins to the land of pastas and pizzas we know today. So close your eyes, breathe deeply, and allow yourself to drift as the journey begins. Long, long before Rome rose from a cluster of wooden huts, and long before marble temples touched the sky, the Italian peninsula was a quiet, wild, and ancient world. It was a land shaped by mountains, the tall Alps in the north, like silent guardians of stone, and the long spine of the Apennines running gently through the peninsula. Between the mountains lay soft valleys, wide plains, and calm rivers. Small communities lived here. Thousands of years ago, they were farmers, shepherds, craftsmen, people who lived slowly, in rhythm with the earth. The first major people of the peninsula were the Etruscans. The Etruscans lived in what is now Tuscany, Umbria, and northern Lazio. They built elegant cities, with paved streets, beautiful pottery, and quiet temples dedicated to their gods. Even today, mysterious tombs and carved walls lie hidden beneath the soil, whispering stories of this forgotten civilization. The Etruscans were skilled at metalwork, masters of bronze, and early engineers. They traded with Greece, with Phoenicia, and seafaring peoples across the Mediterranean. Their society was organized, structured, and surprisingly advanced, for a world thousands of years before Rome's dominance. Meanwhile, in the region of Latium, a smaller, humbler people lived, the Latins. They were not as wealthy as the Etruscans, not as artistic, not as powerful. They lived in small villages, each built on a hilltop for protection. They grew wheat, herded animals, and built families and traditions that would one day become the foundation of something extraordinary. Among these hills, one stood out, a hill near a gentle curve in the river Tiber, a hill called Palatine. Here, a few families built a small settlement. Nothing special, nothing unusual, just a cluster of huts made of mud and straw. But this quiet hill would become the beating heart of one of the greatest civilizations in human history. For now, though, Italy was still a land of tribes. South of the Latins lived the Sabines. In the mountains, and in the far south, Greek settlers built magnificent cities, like Naples and Syracuse. These cities brought philosophy, writing, and architecture from the wider Greek world. The Italian peninsula became a crossroads of ideas. Etruscan religion, Greek knowledge, Latin discipline, all these elements began to mix, slowly, quietly, creating the earliest foundations of what would one day become Rome. But at this moment in history, Rome did not yet exist. It was still only a whisper, a name waiting to be spoken. In the soft light of ancient Italy, tribes tended their fields, lit fires at sunset, and watched the stars. They had no idea that the land under their feet would one day shape the entire world. And now, as we drift deeper into the past, we approach the moment when a simple hilltop village begins its transformation into an empire. Now, the story slowly turns toward a hill called Palatine, a quiet settlement where the first foundations of Rome were laid. Legend tells us that Rome was founded by Romulus and Remus, twin brothers abandoned as infants, raised by a she-wolf, in a cave near the Tiber River. Whether legend or truth, something extraordinary began here. On this modest hill, the Latins and Sabines lived together, trading, sharing rituals, learning to cooperate, to survive, and to thrive. From these small beginnings, Rome gradually grew. Huts became houses, villages became a town, and towns grew into a city. Rome's location was strategic, protected by hills, yet open to the river and trade routes. The Tiber provided water, food, and a quiet path to the sea. As Rome expanded, its people learned from the Etruscans how to build roads, drain swamps, and create temples. They adopted the alphabet, borrowed the gods, and slowly developed the customs that would define their society for centuries. Rome was not built in a day, nor by one man, nor by one generation. It was the work of many, of families, of farmers and craftsmen, of soldiers and priests, all contributing to a growing rhythm of city life. The early Roman kings ruled with both authority and wisdom. They built public spaces, the forum, markets, temples, creating a city alive with possibility. And then, Rome began to look beyond its own borders. The Latin League, the surrounding tribes, and the small city-states, all became part of a wider Roman network. Through alliances, through negotiation, through the slow, persistent power of organization, Rome grew stronger, more confident, more ambitious. By the 5th century BC, Rome had established its power on the peninsula. Its army, disciplined and relentless, was feared by neighboring tribes. At the same time, Rome's society was quietly complex. Patricians and plebeians, senators and magistrates, laws codified, traditions passed down, rituals observed with care. And as the city thrived, it began to attract people from beyond, traders, artisans, scholars, and even foreign settlers. Rome's population grew, its culture deepened, its influence spread. Wars were fought, not always with great violence, but Rome learned and grew stronger from each challenge. Slowly, Rome evolved from a small village into a republic, and from a republic into the heart of a future empire. By the 3rd century BC, Rome controlled most of Italy. Its roads stretched far, its armies disciplined, its citizens loyal, its culture admired. And so, from simple beginnings, Rome rose, quietly, persistently, toward greatness, power, stretching across the Italian peninsula, and soon, across the Mediterranean. The Republic had given way to extraordinary leaders, men like Julius Caesar, whose ambition and genius reshaped the world. Caesar crossed rivers and seas, his armies disciplined, his mind strategic, as he expanded Rome's borders beyond imagination. Rome was no longer just a city, it was an empire. Its influence reached Spain, Gaul, Greece, Egypt, and far into the lands we now call Turkey and the Middle East. Rome's streets were alive, markets bustling with traders, voices echoing in stone courtyards, merchants selling spices, olives, and wine, children laughing in narrow alleys, carts rolling over cobblestones. The architecture reflected the empire's power, grand temples, amphitheaters, aqueducts stretching across valleys, roads linking cities, so precise, so strong, that some still exist today. The Colosseum rose in Rome, a magnificent arena, where people gathered to watch grand spectacles. But life in Rome was more than spectacle. It was art, philosophy, politics, and daily routines that connected millions. The Pax Romana, the Roman peace, was a time of relative stability lasting over 2 centuries. During this period, roads and cities flourished, commerce thrived, culture blossomed, and ideas traveled as freely as the rivers. Roman society was complex. Citizens were divided into classes: the patricians, wealthy and influential; the plebeians, ordinary citizens; soldiers, artisans, farmers, all contributing to the rhythm of daily life. Rome also absorbed cultures, Greek ideas, Egyptian knowledge, and local traditions, creating a civilization rich in diversity, yet unified by law, language, and identity. Religion played a central role. The pantheon of gods guided daily life. Rituals and festivals filled the calendar. Temples dedicated to Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and other deities stood as silent witnesses to the empire's glory. Yet, even in such greatness, Rome faced challenges: political intrigue, assassinations, rebellions, and the ever-looming pressures of managing such vast territories. The empire's leaders learned, adapted, and sometimes fell, but Rome endured. Its legacy would stretch far beyond the Mediterranean, beyond the lives of its citizens, and into the dreams of future generations. Trade routes connected distant lands. Grain from Egypt fed the people. Olive oil and wine traveled across the seas. Luxury goods flowed into Rome, and ideas, philosophies, inventions traveled faster than armies. Life in Rome was vibrant. The streets smelled of bread and spices. The forum echoed with speeches. Children played in courtyards. And above all, The people moved in harmony with the grand rhythm of an empire. Time passed. Emperors came and went. Some loved, some feared, some remembered, others forgotten. But the Roman Empire, with all its achievements, all its triumphs, all its quiet moments of everyday life, was a civilization like no other. And as we drift, slowly, through the centuries, we begin to see how even the mightiest empire must eventually transform, changing, fading, evolving, into something new. By the 4th and 5th centuries AD, Rome, the mighty empire, began to show signs of strain. Its vast territories were difficult to govern. The armies were stretched thin, resources became scarce, and political unrest grew in the streets of the capital. The once glorious Senate debated. Emperors rose and fell, sometimes murdered, sometimes exiled, leaving the people unsure. Yet life continued. The Western Roman Empire, fragile, finally collapsed in 476 AD. The city of Rome itself, though still magnificent, no longer held the power it once commanded. Italy, the heart of the fallen empire, became a patchwork of kingdoms and city-states. Northern regions were ruled by the Ostrogoths, the Lombards in central regions, and various other rulers, each leaving a subtle mark on the land. Life slowed. As towns and villages became more self-reliant, people farmed the land, attended church, and followed the rhythm of the seasons. Yet, knowledge and culture were preserved, quietly, patiently, by monasteries and abbeys. Monks copied texts by hand, illuminated manuscripts, keeping the wisdom of Rome alive. For future generations, trade diminished, roads fell into disrepair. But some cities, like Venice and Genoa, grew quietly, building wealth through commerce and careful diplomacy. The Middle Ages, though often thought of as dark, was a time of transformation. Castles rose on hilltops, stone walls protecting communities from invaders, while inside, people lived simple, peaceful lives. Italy's landscape changed. Forests slowly cleared, villages expanded, and towns grew around churches and marketplaces. Art and architecture evolved. Romanesque churches, fortified walls, and early cathedrals became landmarks, quietly shaping the character of Italian cities. Despite uncertainty and occasional conflict, Italy was a land of rich diversity. Different regions, different cultures, different languages, all existed side by side, like threads in a vast tapestry. And as centuries passed, seeds were planted, for a rebirth, for something extraordinary, a time when Italy would illuminate the world with art, science, and innovation. A gentle breeze of change, slowly preparing the world for the Renaissance. And now, as we drift further along, we leave behind the slow, quiet streets of medieval Italy, and move toward a golden age of art, discovery, and beauty. As the Middle Ages slowly gave way, a new light began to shine across Italy. It started in the northern cities, Florence, Venice, Milan, places where merchants and scholars lived, where ideas flowed as freely as the rivers. Florence, in particular, became a quiet center of curiosity and creativity. Patrons such as the Medici family supported artists, architects, and thinkers, funding beauty and knowledge, so it could flourish gently, like a soft bloom. In workshops and studios, artists experimented with perspective, painting landscapes so real, you could almost step into them. Light and shadow, texture, color, every stroke deliberate, every detail a whisper of genius. Michelangelo, working quietly in Florence, began to carve marble, softly shaping stone into lifelike figures. The Pieta emerged, a delicate statue filled with emotion, yet calm, serene, perfect for contemplation. Meanwhile, in Rome, the Vatican was a quiet hub of art and learning. Leonardo da Vinci sketched inventions that would not exist for centuries. Flying machines, bridges, mechanical devices, all drawn carefully, meticulously, his mind drifting between science and imagination. The streets of Venice, with its canals glimmering in the sun, saw gondolas gliding slowly, merchants trading goods, musicians practicing soft melodies, the scent of spices, the reflection of buildings in water, all painting a picture of a city alive, yet calm. Across Italy, architecture transformed. Domes rose toward the sky, like gentle mountains carved by human hands. Churches were adorned with paintings, sculptures, and frescoes telling stories of saints, kings, and ancient myths, each scene designed to inspire, without rushing the observer. Science and philosophy flourished. Humanism became a guiding principle, the study of humanity itself, the natural world, and the potential of mankind, quietly reshaping education, thought, and daily life. In Florence, Venice, and Milan, citizens debated ideas in markets and town halls, merchants, artists, and scholars discussing mathematics, astronomy, poetry, and music, all in a tone of gentle curiosity, not conflict. The Renaissance was not just about art, but about life itself, the slow, deliberate rediscovery of beauty, knowledge, and the human spirit. Italy's countryside also changed. Tuscany's rolling hills, olive groves, vineyards stretching like green carpets, small towns where life moved slowly, people walking along cobblestone streets, trading, farming, living, all quietly intertwined with the new ideas blossoming in the cities. And beyond the cities, ancient ruins from Rome stood as silent witnesses, reminding Italians of their past, and inspiring them to build anew. The echoes of Rome, the whisper of marble halls, guided the Renaissance, even as new ideas took root. Artists, thinkers, and patrons all played a part, from Leonardo and Michelangelo to Botticelli and Raphael, each contributing to a slow, calm wave of genius that transformed not only Italy, but eventually the entire world. Trade routes carried not only goods, but knowledge, books, manuscripts, instruments, and ideas, from Italy to France, Spain, Germany, quietly shaping Europe. Music evolved. Soft madrigals, gentle lute songs, and choral works, filling churches and courts with calm. A soundtrack to the Renaissance that could soothe, inspire, and captivate simultaneously. As we drift through this period, imagine the cities bathed in soft sunlight, streets echoing with the gentle murmur of conversation, artists sketching quietly, sculptors tapping marble with soft, measured strikes, students reading by candlelight in stone halls, life moving gracefully, deliberately, yet full of innovation. The Renaissance lasted centuries, from the 14th to the 17th century, a long, gentle bloom, gradually spreading across Italy, and leaving a legacy that endures today. It was a time of beauty, calm, and wonder, a perfect period for reflection, for sleep, and for allowing history to wash slowly over the mind. As the Renaissance gently faded, Italy slowly moved into a new age, the Baroque period, a time of grandeur, emotion, and soft drama. Imagine walking through the streets of Rome, cobblestones warmed by the afternoon sun, church bells ringing softly in the distance, the scent of flowers and fresh bread drifting through narrow alleys. New palaces rose, ornate, elegant, with curved staircases, and walls painted with vivid colors, golden light reflecting softly off every surface. Each building told a story, every detail, every column, every carving, designed to draw the eye gently and soothe the soul. Artists like Caravaggio and Bernini emerged, creating sculptures and paintings that seemed alive, but in a way that did not rush the observer. Caravaggio's soft play of light and shadow, Bernini's gentle movement of marble figures, invited you to linger, to breathe slowly, to imagine yourself walking beside the angels and saints. Music became soft and expressive, the gentle rise and fall of harpsichords, violins, and organs, filling churches and salons with calm, every note a gentle ripple in the mind, soothing, relaxing, almost hypnotic. In Venice, the canals glimmered under the afternoon sun, gondolas floated slowly along quiet waters, merchants tended to silk and spice, while artists painted reflections of the city in their sketches. The air smelled faintly of salt, wood, and blossoms, and the soft murmur of voices created a lullaby of life. Meanwhile, in Naples, Florence, and Bologna, philosophers and scientists began to quietly question the world. They studied the stars, watched the tides, recorded plants, animals, and minerals. Their discoveries moved slowly, but they planted seeds for the Enlightenment, an age of reason, that would transform thought across Europe. Imagine a scholar sitting by candlelight, a leather-bound book open, ink slowly flowing from quill to paper, scribbling ideas about geometry, nature, and the heavens, while outside, night fell gently, crickets sang softly, and the wind whispered through trees. Daily life moved with a quiet rhythm. Farmers rose before dawn, tending olive trees and vineyards. Children played quietly in the village square. Bakers prepared bread, and townspeople moved gently between markets, workshops, and churches. Italy was alive, but in a calm, measured way, a delicate balance of art, faith, science, and daily routine, where every moment could be savored. In the courts of powerful families, noblemen and women walked through gardens, roses, lavender, and orange blossoms filling the air. They discussed poetry, music, and philosophy, their conversations flowing softly, like a gentle stream winding through a sunlit valley. And while kings and dukes ruled, the people of Italy lived quietly, creating pottery, weaving cloth, and tending fields, maintaining traditions passed down for centuries, all while absorbing the new ideas emerging from cities and scholars. The Enlightenment began to gently unfold. Philosophers pondered reason, liberty, and science. Scientific instruments measured the heavens. Astronomers slowly mapped the stars, and mathematicians explored the patterns of the universe, all with calm, deliberate care. Italy became a landscape of contrast. Majestic cathedrals, quiet villages, bustling markets, tranquil rivers, ancient ruins, new palaces, all layered together, inviting the listener to drift slowly through centuries of beauty, thought, and calm. And as night fell over Italy, the country's soft hills, its quiet rivers, its ancient towns and modern cities, all seemed to whisper the history of a land that had grown, learned, and dreamed over thousands of years. This was a time of gentle progress, of curiosity, of beauty, of slow, deliberate change, preparing Italy for the transformations of the 19th century, when the land would finally unite and move toward modernity. By the early 19th century, Italy was still a patchwork of kingdoms, duchies, and city-states. The north, controlled by Austria; the south, ruled by the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies; and the central regions, a mix of papal states and small principalities. Each region had its own customs, traditions, and a gentle rhythm of life. People farmed olive groves, tended vineyards, baked bread, traded in markets, and quietly lived in the shadow of their rulers. Yet, in the hearts of many, the dream of a united Italy began to grow. Soft whispers in cafes, gentle debates in libraries, letters exchanged between thinkers, all carrying the hope of uniting a land divided for centuries. One of the key figures was Giuseppe Garibaldi, a soldier with a calm, determined spirit. He traveled quietly at first, planning campaigns, gathering supporters, and moving across the Italian countryside with care. Another was Count Camillo di Cavour, a wise and patient politician in the Kingdom of Sardinia. He worked behind the scenes, negotiating treaties, building alliances, and gradually preparing the ground for a united nation. Imagine the landscapes of Italy during this time: rolling hills of Tuscany, soft sunlight glimmering over vineyards, gentle rivers winding through quiet valleys, small villages where life moved slowly, even as history quietly turned. The Expedition of the Thousand, led by Garibaldi in 1860, was a series of careful, strategic movements. Red shirts sailed slowly along the coasts of Sicily. Villages watched silently, sometimes welcoming, sometimes cautious, as Garibaldi's forces moved steadily northward. Each town, each village, experienced change in its own soft way. The people adapted, sometimes celebrating, sometimes simply observing, as the dream of unification began to unfold. By 1861, Italy became a single kingdom under Victor Emmanuel II. The capital slowly moved, from Turin to Florence, and eventually to Rome. Each city gently transformed, administration, roads, buildings, everything evolving to fit the new nation. Yet unification was not abrupt. Regional cultures remained. The North and South retained their own rhythms, their own cuisines, dialects, festivals and traditions, all coexisting under the calm banner of one country. The Italian people, farmers, artisans, scholars, and merchants, continued their daily routines, working slowly in harmony with the land, celebrating local festivals, attending church services, gathering in town squares, all while quietly building the story of a unified nation. Art and culture flourished in this period, softly blending Renaissance ideals with new ideas, painting, music, and literature reflecting both the old regional diversity and the emerging national identity. Italy's countryside, from the soft hills of Tuscany to the sun-kissed shores of Sicily, was filled with gentle movement, oxen ploughing fields, women tending gardens, children walking slowly to school, all under the watchful presence of history. And slowly, Italy entered the modern age, with a calm sense of purpose, a nation that had united, not through sudden upheaval, but through generations of thought, patience, and gentle determination. Even today, the cities, towns, and landscapes carry the echo of this quiet, deliberate unification, inviting those who listen to drift slowly into the rhythm of history and into the peace of understanding the past. As the 20th century dawned, Italy entered a new era. Cities grew larger, industries began to rise, and people moved slowly from villages to bustling towns. Yet life in many regions remained gentle, rooted in tradition and the rhythm of the land. Rome, Florence, and Milan slowly transformed, ancient streets coexisting with new buildings, shops and cafes opening quietly, streets alive with the soft murmur of people, carriages, later cars, moving at a relaxed pace, blending past and present. Italy faced challenges, wars and political change, yet the people continued their daily lives. Farmers tended fields, bakers baked bread, fishermen cast nets into calm seas, and families gathered around tables filled with the scent of fresh pasta, olive oil and herbs. During this period, Italian art continued to flourish. Painters explored new movements. Sculptors worked quietly in studios. Cinema began to tell stories on the big screen, softly projecting the culture and life of Italy to audiences near and far. Music evolved. Opera houses in Milan and Naples hosted gentle performances, the voices rising and falling like waves, in a calm, mesmerizing rhythm. Folk songs echoed through valleys and villages, passed down softly from generation to generation. Sports became a gentle part of culture. Football clubs began forming. Stadiums filled slowly with fans, cheers blending into the atmosphere, without disturbing the soft flow of everyday life. The countryside remained peaceful, vineyards stretching across rolling hills, olive groves swaying in the wind, small towns dotted between rivers and forests, with churches, fountains, and town squares, filled with quiet life and calm activity. By the mid-20th century, Italy slowly rebuilt after the wars. Industries expanded, infrastructure grew, yet the soul of the nation remained rooted in its history, the streets still whispering stories of the past, and the landscapes carrying echoes of centuries of human life. Tourism began to grow gently, people from all over the world, walking slowly through Florence, Venice, and Rome, marveling at art, architecture, and history, absorbing the soft rhythm of Italian life. Food, fashion, and culture became quietly iconic. Restaurants served pasta, pizza, and regional dishes. Fashion houses in Milan created soft, elegant designs, and festivals continued to fill towns with gentle music, colors, and traditions. Even in the modern era, Italy remained a land of contrasts. Ancient ruins beside modern streets, quiet villages near bustling cities, peaceful countryside with winding rivers and vineyards, all inviting anyone who listens to drift slowly into its rhythm and gently into sleep. Today, Italy is a living tapestry of history and modernity, a place where the past and present coexist peacefully, and where every street, river, and hill tells a calm story, waiting to be heard, slowly and softly. And as we slowly reach the end of our long journey through the history of Italy, I'd like to take you through one last peaceful chapter, a gentle closing walk through some of the smaller, quieter corners of the country, places that rarely appear in textbooks, yet carry whispers of centuries gone by. Let your thoughts settle, let the pace slow down, and drift with me through the forgotten edges of Italy. Molise, the region that doesn't exist. There is a quiet joke among Italians that Molise isn't real. But Molise is real, just incredibly silent. Rolling hills, tiny stone villages, narrow roads that wind like sleepy thoughts. You can walk through towns where you might meet just a handful of people as the evening settles. A region where time moves softly, almost politely, where every sound is gentle, and nothing demands too much of you. Basilicata, the overlooked heart. Between Apulia and Calabria lies Basilicata, a region that rarely tries to impress anyone. Its ancient towns cling to mountainsides, its valleys sink into shadows just before sunset, and its air feels like it has stayed the same for hundreds of years. The villages are quiet, with warm yellow lights glowing slowly in the night. Everything moves at a steady, dreamlike pace. The Aeolian Islands, quiet sparks in the sea. North of Sicily lie the Aeolian Islands, 7 small drops of land scattered across the water. Some islands are lively, but many are calm, gentle, and almost meditative. Filicudi and Alicudi feel like the world is far away. No rushing cars, no bright noises, only the waves repeating themselves, again and again, like a lullaby written by the sea. Even Stromboli, the fiery volcano, breathes slowly, as if exhaling ancient stories into the night sky. Val d'Aosta, a whispering alpine valley. Far in the north, the smallest Italian region rests between tall mountains. Wooden houses, pine forests, crumbling castles watching over the valley like patient guardians. The world here feels unchanged, peaceful, gentle, and full of cold fresh air that clears the mind. A perfect place to simply breathe, and let the world fade. Salina, the island of quiet evenings. Part of the Aeolian chain, Salina is known for its capers and calm rhythms. Narrow streets, soft sea breezes, and a deep sense of stillness that settles over the island after sunset. There is nothing loud here, only the soft hum of night insects and the slow heartbeat of the sea. The Tremiti Islands, almost forgotten. Off the coast of Apulia are the Tremiti Islands, tiny, bright, surrounded by turquoise water. Few people go there, and even fewer stay. The cliffs glow in the sunlight, and in the evenings, the world becomes so quiet that even your footsteps sound like whispers. A place where time simply pauses. Friuli Venezia Giulia, where 3 worlds touch. At the northeastern edge of Italy sits a region shaped by Italian, Austrian, and Slovenian memories. Small squares, old bridges, and towns where the streets feel older than the buildings around them. History here doesn't shout, it hums, gently, like a distant melody you've almost forgotten. Calabria's Tyrrhenian coast, ancient and undisturbed. In the deep south of Italy lies a rugged but peaceful stretch of coastline. Villages like Silla lean over emerald waters, and fishermen still tell stories older than the country itself. Everything feels slower here, the sea, the wind, even the light. It all moves like a deep, calming breath. Umbria, the quiet heart of Italy. Tucked beside the famous hills of Tuscany is Umbria, softer and quieter. Stone villages, olive groves that shimmer in the sun, and gentle hills that rise and fall like a peaceful dream. Walking through Umbria feels like turning the pages of a centuries-old book, soft, warm, and comforting. And so, as we leave these small regions and hidden corners behind, let their quietness stay with you a little longer. Imagine the calm hills, the deep blue sea, the sleeping villages, the ancient paths trodden by countless footsteps before ours, all slowly fading into the night, as your mind drifts, deeper and deeper, into rest. Thank you for joining this journey, and wherever you are now, I hope sleep finds you easily. Good night.
Ciao e buonanotte.